negotiations related to climate finance and being able to not just get the level of climate finance that has been pledged. There's a pledge for $100 billion worth of climate finance by the year 2020 and $100 billion every year thereafter, and we're very far short of this. At the last pledging meeting for the Green Climate Fund, I think we'll just pass $10 billion. Now granted, the Green Climate Fund is not the only source of financing for climate finance, but we're still very far short of $100 billion. So we want to see a pathway that will get us to that $100 billion, because it's very important for us. And there's so much that has to be done in the area of climate change adaptation. We have to make sure that we make the investments in the various sectors like tourism, infrastructure, health, that would give us some resilience and the ability to withstand some of the impacts of climate change. And where we can't adapt, to deal with irreversible loss and damage, like we're already seeing with some of our coral reefs that are disappearing because of increased sea surface temperatures and ocean acidification. So climate finance is the first issue. Adaptation and loss and damage is another issue. Mitigation, helping us and when we speak of mitigation, we speak of reducing emissions of greenhouse gases. The science is showing that despite the pledges that have been made by the US and China, and also by the European Union last year, we are still very far away from limiting global temperatures to the 2 degrees Celsius or 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. In fact, the science is suggesting that with the level of emissions we have right now, and even with the pledges that have been made, we are probably on track to almost a 4 degrees Celsius warming. The World Bank put that out in a report last year, and the science is suggesting that 4 degrees Celsius will be devastating for the Caribbean and the other small island developing states. 4 degrees Celsius will cause many of our ecosystems to be threatened, will accelerate the rate of extinction of species. You will have sea level rise that is above 1 meter, and 1 meter sea level rise already is problematic. I mean, you're talking about over 100 tourism resorts being destroyed, ports being inundated, airports underwater. So there is need for very serious action between now and December, when we will sign a new climate change agreement in Paris. And that's why we brought everybody here together, not just the negotiators, but the ministers who have to negotiate at the highest political levels. And I think that's one of the problems. Because of our smallness of size, we do not always have the level of resources that can match what some of the big developed countries like the US and the UK and the EU countries bring to those meetings. And it has proven to be a challenge. So we want to make sure that we fully apprise of the issues, but we also approach this in a much more coordinated manner so that there is strength in numbers. So we're not going as St. Lucia, but we're going as 15 strong Caribbean.
Okay. Mr. Minister, not only climate change, but how important is it for St. Lucia to tap into some renewable energy, things of that nature?
It's extremely important for two reasons. First of all, the price of electricity in St. Lucia is 38 US cents per kilowatt hour. Now, that does not place us at the highest end in the Caribbean. There are many other countries that are way higher than us. But 38 US cents per kilowatt hour is still a big strain on many of our economic sectors, on the tourism industry in particular, that depends on electricity as an input for cooling and for lighting. It is a strain on manufacturing. It is a strain on agriculture, because if you're going to add value to your agricultural produce, you need an input of energy. So it's important for us to reduce that price so that we can make our economic sectors more competitive and also stimulate employment. But it's also important for us because it strengthens our moral voice. When we go to the international community and we lobby for a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, we're basically saying to the developed countries that you have to lessen your reliance on fossil fuels. You have to lessen your reliance on oil or coal for the generation of electricity, and you have to cut your greenhouse gas emissions. It's an even more powerful statement when we say that a country like St. Lucia, whose contribution to global greenhouse gases is less than 1/1000th of a percent, that we are making changes and we have committed to a 35% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by the year 2020. So what are you doing? Countries that are much bigger emitters and can make an even bigger impact, what are you doing? So I think us moving on a renewable energy path and us pursuing a green economy strategy is beneficial in all areas.
And with all the controversy about fuel and fuel prices, do you believe that St. Lucia should look for alternative places to be purchasing now and not Venezuela, seeing that Venezuela themselves is going for a bit of a struggle?
Well, first of all, we're not purchasing fuel from Venezuela. Although St. Lucia is a signatory to Petrokai, Venezuela is not our source of fuel. But I think more fundamental to the question is the fact that we are now at a point where oil is less than $50 a barrel. Not too long ago, oil was approaching $150 a barrel. Now, oil is less than $50 a barrel now, not because of any big advances in technology, not because of any big disruptions or improvements in the supply chain. Oil is at $50 a barrel because of the geopolitics of oil and because of what is happening in the US with the shale gas sector and the position of some of the Middle Eastern countries, particularly Saudi Arabia, who have said that they will not interfere with the price. So clearly this is not a game that the Caribbean should be playing because we can't influence that game. The price of oil will be $50 a barrel today. It can very easily be $100, $120 a barrel in 3 months' time when the big players decide, you know what, we're going to let the price go back up. Now, you cannot base an economy, you cannot base your own sustainable development path on an environment where oil can fluctuate so widely. So I say to people who ask me, well, given that oil is less than $50 a barrel, does it make sense to pursue a renewable energy pathway? I say to them, precisely because oil is less than $50 a barrel, we should do it because it shows that we really are at the mercy of this global market, and we have to ensure that we establish complete, if not complete independence, but at least a certain level of insulation from it, so that regardless what happens on the international market with oil, we know we can depend on the sun that always shines, on the wind that always blows, on our geothermal that is always steaming to provide us with our own source of electricity, so that we can say with certainty that the price of electricity in St. Lucia will be 25 US cents per kilowatt hour. Doesn't matter what happens out there, that is something that we can go to the bank on. So I say that even more proof that what we're doing is very, very wise and very prudent.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Let's hope you